Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. So I saw that the fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul is supposed to be July 20th. I'm really curious to watch that fight. I think it's going to be like an exhibition fight. Like, it's not going to matter or anything like that. Like, neither of them I don't think is going to make, like, it's not for like a title or anything like that. I'm sure they're going to make money off of it. I don't think I've ever watched like a full boxing match before, but I may have to watch that one. Like, I'm not really a fan of either, but I feel like in that fight, like, Mike Tyson's going to kill him, right? I mean, I don't really know much about Jake Paul. I know he is like a fighter. He's a boxer. I think he's been boxing for like since like 2018. I was looking up their records, and I think let's see. It looks like Jake Paul, he's had 10 fights so far, I believe. Let me double check real quick. He's had 10 fights. He's won 9 of them and lost 1, and 6 of them were KOs. So, all right. So he's not too bad, I guess. I know I looked him up online, and a lot of people were saying that he's generally not very good, so I'm not really sure. But let's see. Tyson, he ended his boxing career with a record of 50 wins, 44 of which were KOs, damn. 6 losses and 2 no contests. So altogether, he's had 58 fights. Jeez. And he won 50 of them. Holy crap. I mean, he's Iron Mike. Like I said, like, I'm not a fan of either guy, but I mean, there's no denying that Mike Tyson was a good boxer. Like, he was damn good. So, I don't know, like, everybody's saying that, like, his age is going to have a huge effect on the fight. I mean, yeah, it's going to, for sure. I mean, the dude's like, what, 57? So, I don't know, though, man. I mean, I wouldn't fight that guy. Like, I mean, I'm not a fighter, but I mean, I'm in pretty decent shape. Like, I lift, I run and stuff like that. I'm not really, like, I hit the heavy bag every now and then, but I'm not a trained fighter or anything like that. But you could not pay me enough money to get in the ring with Mike Tyson, even if it was just like for 2 or 3 rounds. Like, if he's going at it full force, no way in hell am I getting in the ring with that guy. I mean, like, I don't care that I'm basically 22 years younger than him. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that he would kick my ass. Like, pretty much like all across the ring. It would not be a fight. It would basically just me crying and Mike Tyson just beating the shit out of me. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch, though. I mean, I'm definitely going to tune in for sure. But, I mean, I just feel like, I think everyone's pretty much saying that Tyson's going to kill him. Like, I don't know. My money's on Mike Tyson. Like, he's Iron Mike. Like I said, I don't know much about Jake Paul, but I don't see how he could possibly go up against this guy. I don't care that he is like almost 30 years younger than him. Like, I've seen the videos of Tyson training. Like, he seems like he's taking this fight seriously. Like, he's really trying to get in shape for it. Again, I know it's going to be for entertainment, so it's not like they're really going to be going at it full force. I think it was kind of like when Logan Paul fought against Floyd Mayweather. Like, I think it was pretty obvious that Mayweather was pretty much in control the entire fight. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he knocked Logan Paul out at one point, like on his feet, and then he caught him because they had to keep the fight going because it's for entertainment purposes. So I don't know if this is going to be quite like that. I don't know how old Mayweather is or was during that fight. I want to guess like in his 40s, but I don't really know. Like I said, I don't really follow boxing too much. I did go back and watch like a YouTube video of like some of Mike Tyson's old fights, like his old like famous knockouts and stuff like that. And man, the dude was a freaking beast back in the day. Just watching the way he would just lay into guys in that ring. I mean, he would just find an opening and just knock their asses down, just chop them down. It was crazy. So it's going to be entertaining to watch for sure. It's going to be on Netflix, I believe. I think they said it's going to be streaming for free on Netflix. I don't really know how that works, but I'll probably tune in and watch this one. It looks like it might be entertaining at the very least. And I got no problem watching 2 guys beat the shit out of each other, so I'm all for it. All right, so anyways, tonight, going to do my review of the new 2024 Roadhouse film, a remake / I guess, reimagining of the original film. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal as Dalton, Conor McGregor as the psychopath Knox, Daniela Melchior as Ellie. She also played she was also in the Suicide Squad, the rat girl, whatever her superhero name was. as well as Billy Magnuson. So I've seen the original Roadhouse. It's been quite a long time. Came out 1999 with Patrick Swayze. I think I've seen it the whole way through, maybe once or twice. It's pretty good, I guess. It's not really one of my favorite movies. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I never really was a huge fan of Roadhouse. It's fine. I'm not crazy about it. It's not one of those movies I go out of my way to watch, so I wasn't super eager to watch this film. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This was not a good movie. I didn't like it. I mean, I found it entertaining, but this was not a movie that I would recommend. I would definitely even call it a pretty bad movie. It's entertaining, though, for reasons that I'll go over here shortly. But yeah, it's definitely not a good film, in my opinion. I'll just get into the story just very quickly. If you've seen the original, you kind of already know what to expect in this one. But Jake Gyllenhaal plays a disgraced UFC fighter who goes down to the Florida Keys to essentially take on a job to be a bouncer at a bar called the Roadhouse. He discovers that the bar is about to be torn down by Billy Magnuson's character, who wants to essentially develop the area into a resort, because he's basically just some rich douchebag who just wants to control everything. Basically similar to what the original was, if I remember correctly. So Gyllenhaal he decides to try to take on Magnuson and his entire gang of bikers and essentially try to reclaim the town, basically, and protect his job and his friends. So the original, I think, was basically the same premise. I think there were some differences. I don't remember too much, but I do remember the history of Dalton's character was different in the original. Swayze in the original, I don't remember if he was a professional fighter. I don't remember if he was what his history was, if he was ex special forces or a Navy SEAL or something like that. I remember he was a really good fighter. But in this one, they actually changed his story, where Gyllenhaal's character is actually he's actually a UFC fighter. So that was an interesting change. I guess I don't know if that was an excuse to bring Conor McGregor into the movie. I'll get to his character here in a little bit. There's a few key differences in this one from the original, in terms of the story. This one takes place in Florida Keys. The original took place in Jasper, Missouri, which I didn't even know until recently. So yeah, that's one difference. Also, I think Dalton's name in this one is different as well. Dalton's his last name, and I can't remember what his first name is, but his first name is different in this one than it was in the original with Patrick Swayze, which I thought was a interesting key difference. So another major difference in this one too is that Sam Elliott's character, Garrett, I think was his name from the original. There's no Garrett character in this one. It's pretty much just Dalton by himself defending the Roadhouse bar. So that was an interesting omission. I remember liking Sam Elliott's character in the original movie, even though he is tragically killed in that film. So there's no character like that in this one. Like I said, it's just the main character just kind of by himself trying to protect the bar and take on the biker gang. Some of the differences between this and the original, not that I would consider the original a classic film by any means, but there were some interesting creative choices they made with this film. So, and I'll kind of get into kind of what I think about the story overall here in a little bit. I guess the main parts I want to talk about with this movie, because I don't know, there's not really a lot to talk about. It's not really, to me, it didn't leave much of an impact. I guess the main talking points I'll talk about is just the story and then I guess the fights, because that's really the two big things about this film. Well, and also I guess the acting too. So I guess there'll be three main points: the story, the acting, and then the fighting. So as far as the story goes, I've already kind of talked about just some of the key differences between this one and the original. You've seen this story a million times before. It's that fish out of water type story. New guy strolls into town, discovers that there's a gang that's taken over, that's kind of calling the shots, and he basically takes them on. This film really doesn't do anything different in that regard, which I wasn't honestly expecting it to. I don't know. It feels like it checks off all the boxes. You got your hero, you got your villains, you got the love interest. That's who Daniela plays. She's this doctor that Dalton hooks up with after one of the fights. And then, of course, they, surprising to no one, they form a relationship. Even though, I don't know, the chemistry between them feels kind of lazy and cheap to me. like the story wise, this really didn't do anything for me. I felt like watching this that I knew everything that was going to happen way before it did. Which, to be fair, I mean, that's kind of how the original Roadhouse was as well. Just throughout the movie, like you pretty much know what's going to happen. Like when Dalton first runs into the motorcycle gang, like I will admit that part is pretty funny. It is pretty cool, like how he just like slaps him around, like quite literally, and then drives him to the hospital. That was interesting. I think for the most part, that's kind of how his character was in the original one. Just kind of a nice laid back guy, as long as you didn't mess with him. But if you pissed him off, he would just, beat the shit out of you. And that's kind of how Dalton's character is in this one. And I do think for the most part that like the film, I think, handles that, relatively well, of him just kind of being this even keel guy. I like the part where he's driving the guys to the hospital, even though it is pretty stupid when you think about it. It's like, these guys could just kill you, dude. Like one of them could just, grab a piece of wire or something and just choke you or something, or they could stab you. So there's a lot of moments like that in the film too that just really don't make sense, or they just seem like really poor decision making from like the main character. Like there's another part in the movie like where Dalton starts training the other bouncers in the bar to be better at their job and be able to defend the bar. And like you can see they start to listen to his advice. But then at one point, like a bunch of the biker guys show up along with Conor McGregor's character. They start wrecking the place up, and Dalton's just sitting there watching the other guys just getting the shit kicked out of him, which I remember thinking like, I don't remember if that was in the original or not, but I just remember thinking like, maybe you should help, dude. These are your friends, and this is also your job, and you're kind of just sitting there watching these guys just destroy everything. Like, and also they're looking for you. So maybe you ought to go over there and just do something. So that was, there's a lot of moments like that in the movie that are just really weird and feel kind of pointless. Also, just something else I have to talk about. I don't know. You really have to suspend your disbelief watching this movie in terms of like just some of the physics that happen in this movie. Like there's this scene where Dalton's walking down the highway and he basically gets hit by a truck and falls into this river underneath this bridge, and he's perfectly fine. Not only that, but in the previous scene that I talked about before where he fights those biker guys and takes them to the hospital, he gets stabbed. And then like the doctor, she sews him up, and then in the next scene, he's fine. He's like perfectly healed. And I don't know if they're clear about how much time passed, but I think it's like maybe been a day or two. It's like if you just got stabbed and had to have stitches put in, you would not be okay in a couple of days. So yeah, there's things like that in this movie, like where you really have to suspend your disbelief. Like there's no way in hell anybody would be able to survive something like this. Yeah, it's Roadhouse. I get it. It's supposed to be a dumb kind of action movie, but still, those parts are just kind of silly. Also, I was really disappointed they didn't have him tearing out people's throats like they did in the original movie. Because from what I remember, that was a big part of Dalton's character in the original, was that he is haunted by the past that he killed some guy by ripping his throat out. And in this one, he doesn't do that. Like none of that is in this movie. So like, that was kind of disappointing. I mean, I guess they were trying to make this different from the original Roadhouse, but because they made it so different, I feel like they could have just called it anything. They could have just called it Fight Movie, and it would have made as much sense as calling it Roadhouse. This really feels like a Roadhouse film in name only. Oh, God. Also, I forgot about this. How could I have forgotten about this? There is a part in the movie where they introduce, like, there's an alligator in the movie because it's in the Florida Keys. And because Dalton goes to live in this boat that's owned by the owner of the Roadhouse bar. Like, she lets him stay in this boathouse. And they warn him about the alligator that's hanging out in the water. It's an alligator or a crocodile? I can't remember which one's in Florida. Well, it doesn't matter. They warned him about the alligator because they said like it ate like her dog at one point. There's a scene in the movie where one of the biker guys shows up in Dalton's house and tries to kill him, and he knocks the guy into the water, and then the alligator eats him. And I really thought that was going to play a bigger part in the movie, but that alligator is just in that one scene, and that's it. You do not see it again at any other point in the movie. And I was really disappointed by that because I wanted to see that alligator fight either Dalton or Conor McGregor's character. And I feel like that was such a wasted opportunity that they didn't do that. So, yeah, that again, another example of like just something that's introduced in the movie and just they don't do anything with it, or what they do with it is extremely disappointing. There's a lot of that in this film. So the story, again, it's very bare bones. There's not much to it. And of course, I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say that, of course, Dalton, he defeats the main villain, Billy Magnuson's character, and it's so ridiculous and over the top. Like there is this ridiculous boat chase scene towards the end of the movie where, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about like you have to suspend your disbelief watching this. You see like Billy Magnuson's character. I can't remember what his character's name is in the movie for the life of me, but I'm just gonna call him Billy. Billy, he's on the boat, fighting with Dalton's character, and he's basically trying to drive the boat into the Roadhouse bar to destroy it. Everybody else jumps off the boat except for him, so the boat hits the shore. Billy is launched into the air, like 50 feet into the air, and he lands on top of the bar. And then in the next scene, he's perfectly fine. Like he's on the roof of the bar and he jumps down like 20 feet and he's perfectly fine. He has like a slight limp. And I just remember watching it just thinking like, this is GTA. This is GTA the movie basically. Because this is exactly what would happen like when I used to play like GTA 5 or something like that. Speaking of GTA, I'm going to talk about some of the acting in this movie. Because for the most part, the acting it's okay. Jake Gyllenhaal is fine as Dalton. His performance feels very phoned in. I like Gyllenhaal. I think he's a really good actor. Like I like him in movies like October Sky, Donnie Darko. Like I really do think he is a talented actor. But in this movie, he just feels really out of place. Number one, I don't know if he was the right pick to play someone like Dalton. Like Patrick Swayze fit that role because, he had that charm and swagger that I think you would need for a character like Dalton, like that seemingly unassuming guy who can just beat the shit out of you at the drop of a hat. And I just never get that from Gyllenhaal. He can be a badass. Like I know he had that movie Southpaw, like I know he can definitely play a badass character, but I don't know, in this movie his performance just feels so phoned in and just I kind of got the impression that he didn't really care about this movie, which don't know if I blame him. It's a Roadhouse film. I don't know. Maybe this was just more of a paycheck to him, just kind of an acting project to do, like in between like bigger projects. But I just never got the impression that he was a badass character. Even in the scenes where you see him dominating other guys in fights, he just never seemed like a badass to me. All the other characters in the film are pretty much fine. Like Daniela's character, she's okay. Like I said, her chemistry with Gyllenhaal's character it feels very forced. I never got the impression that these two really liked each other that much. It just kind of felt like that forced romance that you got to have in these films. Again, like that checklist I mentioned before, like, okay, we got to have the cool fight scenes. We got to have the romance, even if it doesn't really fit. And even if the two characters don't really appear to have much chemistry. Honestly, the best acting is from the villains in this movie. All the villains, like Billy Magnuson and especially Conor McGregor, they're honestly the best parts of this film. Like Conor McGregor, I'm not really a big fan of the guy, whatever. I could take or leave him, but I will admit he is the best part of this movie. As Knox, one of the main villains. Like, I guess he's supposed to be like Reno, the psycho guy from the original. I think that was his name. I guess that's who he's supposed to be in this film. Like, he shows up roughly halfway into the film because, like, the main villain hires him to basically, kick Dalton's ass and, wreck the Roadhouse bar. He's basically Trevor from GTA 5. I think that was the name of one of the three guys you play as, the psychopath guy. He's basically Trevor from GTA 5. Like, he is just batshit insane. Like, there are scenes in the movie where, like, he doesn't know how to stop a vehicle, apparently. Like, he just crashes his car into, like, trees, and that's how he stops. At one point, he crashes his car into, like, a coconut tree, I think, and then, like, a bunch of them just fall on top of his car. Like, he's batshit nuts. Like, he's like the Joker. He's like if you took the Joker and Trevor from GTA 5 and just combined them into, like, one character, and that's basically Conor McGregor's character in this movie. He's so over the top that it's actually kind of funny. Like, he is. He's a cartoon villain. Like, from the first time he walks into the Roadhouse bar, he goes up to this chick and just starts dancing with her, this random chick that he's never met before, and basically tells her boyfriend to piss off, and she's totally cool with it. Like, at no point does she ever question it or say, like, yeah, no, I don't want to dance with you. You seem like a lunatic. And he's just got like a golf club that he just walks into the bar, and nobody in the bar tries to take it from him. Nobody tries to confiscate it. They just let this lunatic come into the bar with this golf club. And then, of course, oh wow, big shock, he just starts wrecking the place. Like, his character is the best part of the movie, just every scene that he's in. And also, too, if you ever wanted to see Conor McGregor's ass, well, you get 2 pretty good looks at it in this movie. So, yeah, there's, for some reason, I don't know why, they have a couple scenes where he just is butt-ass naked, just walking around. It's like when he's first introduced and like the very last scene that he's in the film. So it's like, okay, I don't know why they included that in the movie, but it's there. So if anybody out there has ever wanted to see that, there you go. New Roadhouse 2024, Conor McGregor's ass. It's in the movie. Like, that honestly was the best part of the movie, was just every scene with Conor McGregor, like him fighting, like just him doing whatever. Whether he's talking to somebody or whether he's, in Dalton's face getting ready to fight him, like, he kind of steals the show. Like, the villains of this movie honestly are kind of the best part of the movie. They're just so cartoonishly evil that you can't help but kind of laugh at them. Like, there's another scene with Billy Magnuson's character where, like, he's on his boat because he has, like, this giant yacht out in the water that he spends most of his time on. And he's making one of his henchmen basically shave him while they're on the water, and it's really choppy water out there. And it's just like, why would you just not go back on shore? Like, because he keeps getting nicked, and then he keeps getting pissed off at the guy. And I'm just like, why wouldn't you just go back on shore? Why are you making this guy shave you, like, while you're in the middle of, like, really rough waters? Like, he's such a freaking idiot. There's so much of that in this movie. It is entertaining as hell. Just like I said, every scene the villains are in, I think that's where the movie's at its best. Not because it's good, but because it's just entertaining. It's so stupid that it's entertaining, and I loved that stuff. I was on board with that. Now I'm going to get to my other talking point, and that is the fights. And this, I think, is another part of the movie where it really fails. The fights in this movie, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, I was not impressed with them. The choreography and also the camera work. Like, as far as the choreography goes, they look okay. There's nothing about them that particularly stands out. Even the fight scenes between Dalton and Knox are, like, when they first meet in the bar, they're fine at best. But they don't feel any different from any other fight scene that I've seen in any other action film. Like, nothing about them stands out. This movie doesn't really bring any unique flavor or anything to these. Like, in the original, Patrick Swayze, I think he used mostly, like, I could be wrong, but I thought it was some kind of form of, like, martial arts or mixed martial arts. I'm not really sure. But it felt like there was more of a grace to his fighting style in the original film. In this one, Gyllenhaal's character is a UFC fighter, so he mainly, he boxes and uses submission holds on guys, like when he's fighting Conor McGregor's character, which is interesting, and it's an interesting angle, but it doesn't really feel like they do anything with it. They never really showcase that Dalton has any, unique abilities. Like I said, there's no throat tearing out in this movie, which I was still pissed that wasn't in there. I was really waiting to see how they were going to do that in this, but the fights just feel so generic. But another thing about them that I didn't like was the way they're shot. The camera work during the fight scenes in this are really weird and choppy. And not only that, but they've got weird angles too. Like, the final fight between Dalton and Knox's character, like, the camera constantly zips, like, it's kind of like almost down below them, looking up at them at a weird angle. And I don't know, at times it was really disorienting. And one of the very first bar fights, there's like a bunch of different fights going on. It's like Dalton and Knox, and then like the other bouncers in the Roadhouse are also taking on some of the other members of the biker gang. And the way the camera just keeps bouncing back and forth, it's like, I was not crazy about it. And also too, there were times like where, for whatever reason, the camera would suddenly switch to like a first person view. Like, you see things from, like, Dalton's perspective when he's fighting Knox, and, like, I was not a fan of that. It was just really strange the way they did that. I think they should have just handled the fights more traditionally, or at least tried to handle them like the original one was shot. I think if they had done that, this movie would have been better. But the other thing, too, is they're really, from what I remember, there's not a whole lot of fighting either. Now, I don't remember from the original how much fighting there was in that, but it felt like there was a lot more. In this one, it definitely feels like there's really only a few, like, really big fight scenes. There's, like, the one where I mean, when Dalton first encounters the bike gang, there's not really a fight that breaks out. He mainly just slaps them around a little bit, and it's over really quick. And then the next one is like in the bar, when Knox's character shows up, when Conor McGregor shows up. Then we actually get like a proper fight between the two, and then that stops, and then we really don't get another fight until the very end, where we get like the big one-on-one fight between McGregor's character and Jake Gyllenhaal. And that actually feels like a legitimate proper fight in the film. And it feels like that's where you actually get to see like Gyllenhaal and his training and, you know, kind of like Conor McGregor's knowledge of fighting kind of pay off, and you see it in action there. But one thing they do that really drove me nuts, and this is something like I caught myself noticing this, and this kind of goes back to my point originally about there just being weird random shit in this movie that makes no sense. When they're fighting, at one point, McGregor is knocking Jake's head against the piano, and then Jake stops the fight, like right in the middle of the fight, and he says, "Wait, this piano sounds out of tune." And McGregor goes, "Oh, it sounds fine to me." And then he keeps hitting him against the piano, and I was just like, why did they say that? What? Like, why the hell did they even bring that up? It was such a weird, random, I guess it was supposed to be a joke, but it felt like such a strange tonal shift that I was just, I don't know, I found it distracting. There are quite a few moments like that in this movie that I noticed, and it's just like, I don't understand what the hell were they going for in that? What was it? I get the joke, but like, why is it there? Yeah, like there's stuff like that in this movie, and like I said, just characters inexplicably surviving just injuries they really shouldn't survive, like McGregor just getting just the shit stabbed out of him by a bunch of like wooden stakes by Dalton, and then he's in the next scene he's perfectly fine and just walks out of the hospital. Like, there's a lot of that in this film. It's a wild movie. Like I said, it's very entertaining. It's just not what I would call a good film. Another thing this movie did in one scene that I really don't like from films is there's a lot of scenes where they just explain to you how the characters are feeling. Like, Gyllenhaal's character really doesn't show much emotion, which I feel like would almost work better if they were following the backstory of Swayze's character from the original, because in the original film, Dalton is haunted by the fact that he killed a guy. In this one, there is some of that too, but I don't know, you do get some of that impression that Dalton's haunted by his past, but it feels less like the motivation for why his character is like that, and more just like Gyllenhaal is just quiet because maybe he doesn't care about this role. That was kind of the impression that I got. Like, he's pretty emotionless throughout most of this movie, and a lot of his lines are delivered in a way where it really doesn't feel organic. It feels like most of it's just like expository dialogue. Like, there's a scene where he's talking to one of the bad guys, and he tells him, you know, the reason I hold back is because I know how dangerous I am. And it's like, I hate when movies do that. I hate when movies over-explain like character motivations and their emotions and what they're thinking. Like, we understand. This is Roadhouse. It's not that deep. I get it. I understand what the character is thinking in this moment. Like, I'm okay with expository dialogue, but I don't like it when films over-explain, you know, a scene. I hate it. Like the old saying in Hollywood, show, don't tell. Like, don't tell me a character is sad. Demonstrate it to me. Show me a scene where the character is actually portraying sadness in some way, whether it's through an action that they do, or even inaction, like if they choose to do nothing. Just demonstrate to me through action or inaction that the character, like what emotion the character is experiencing. Don't just tell me what they're experiencing. And there's another scene in the movie where Dalton befriends this young girl who owns like this bookstore. And her character is nice enough, but what I don't like about the scenes with her and him is that, again, it feels like expository dialogue, where at one point she's literally basically describing who his character is within the story. Like, she talks about this book that I think she lets him borrow about a cowboy coming into town, and she compares him to the cowboy. And it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. We know he's the stranger that shows up and saves the town. We understand. Like, you don't need to explain it so specifically. And then at one point, I think she says to him, like, you may not be the villain, Dalton, but you're not or you may not be the good guy, but you're not the villain either. It's like, I hate when movies do that crap. If I had to, in conclusion, kind of give my overall thoughts on this, as far as pros go, it's entertainingly stupid. Like some of the big dumb scenes, like with Conor McGregor's character, like they're so over the top and dumb that you can't help but kind of love them. The villains are probably the best part of the movie. They're just so over the top and cartoony that, like, they really, I think, are probably the saving grace of this film. Honestly, if it wasn't for the villains, I probably would just say this movie really doesn't have anything going for it. As far as negatives go, I would definitely say the movie is just boring overall. I was not really a big fan of it. Like, the sweeping shots you see of the Florida Keys, I guess, are fine. They're pretty enough, but it's not really enough to save it. The heroes, like the main characters, are pretty uninteresting. Like Jake Gyllenhaal's Dalton there's nothing about him. This is not a main character that's going to stick around with you. Like, there's nothing about him that's interesting or compelling. He's just kind of there. The fight choreography, it's really weird. I was not a fan of it. I didn't like how it switched between, like, you know, the regular view and like first person modes, and how like had the weird random angles. So yeah, the fights just were definitely kind of a letdown in this. And then just like the weird, like I said before, the weird moments in the story that make no sense, the tonal shifts that just kind of come out of nowhere. It just feels like kind of a mess. Like the director, I think it was Doug Liman is the guy who directed it. I'm not super familiar with his work, but I think he worked on Edge of Tomorrow. I don't know if he directed that film or not, but yeah, like this movie just feels like kind of a mess and just kind of all over the place. So I guess as long as you enjoy like dumb dialogue and, you know, zany over the top villains, you might get something out of this. But in my opinion, I would just say this movie is pretty bad, and honestly, you're better off just skipping it. It's streaming on Prime right now, so I mean, feel free to watch it and share your thoughts on my YouTube channel, but for my money, I would say this movie, it's kind of a stinker. All right, everyone, I think that's going to conclude tonight's podcast. Once again, if you like what you heard, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time. Later.